Hi guys, welcome back to a new video on the channel. Now today, this, as you'll know by the title, is my Barclays Premier League prediction table for the end of the season. Now, as we know, the Barclays Premier League is again back and due to start on the 17th of June, so that's not too far away. So we're going to get into the prediction video for the table. I've had a lot of people inbox me and ask me to do this, so I've gone online, I've had a look at the different fixtures, and I've done the result predictions, which will come in videos in the future, and they have outlined my table, and it's actually quite interesting. It's not as bad as it could be. So let's get started. So the obvious team that's going to pop up, probably about there, is Liverpool, champions. I don't see any other outcome than Liverpool being champions. I mean, you could argue that maybe the gap could get a little bit smaller. Maybe if Manchester City start better, like they beat Arsenal or something. But I just don't think, with such a small proportion of games left, and Liverpool literally just needing 2 wins, I personally can't see it. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm not saying it can't happen. But I just personally don't think it will happen. So, for me, Liverpool are champions. In second place, again, it's an easy one. It's Manchester City. Excuse me. I think they've been a really solid team this year again. But I think with Manchester City, what worries me is that they seem to be going in. They're in a bit of a dead lull, where they're not overly expansive in the way they play all the time. They're not dominating games the way they used to dominate games. So it's a little bit of a weird one, I think, at Manchester City. But I do think they'll finish second anyway. Obviously, before I get on to the team in third, we don't yet know the outcome of Manchester City's appeal. So we don't know if they're going to be in the Champions League or not. Obviously, I've done these predictions as if Manchester City aren't going to be in the Champions League. So that's where I've got the extra places. But also, I will stress on the video that if Manchester City's appeal is overturned and they're allowed in the Champions League, then obviously that would change the positions. Well, not positions, but it would change the outcomes for the teams. So moving on to third place, and that is for Leicester City. Leicester City, again, they had that amazing team that won the league, and everybody since then has been waiting, or maybe Leicester fans have been waiting to see if it was a one-off. And for me, it wasn't a one-off. I think they are a team that, when you start talking about top 4, big 5, we've always wanted, there's always been that mutter of, can a team break that top 5, that top 4 mould? You know, when you talk about the Premier League, and you always talk about Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United, Tottenham, Manchester City broke into that, and is that like big 6? And I think, personally, Leicester are now starting to break that, because they are such a good side, and they're going to be in the Premier League a long time. They've got a really solid manager, and they've got some very, very good players, and the ability now as well, with them qualifying for the Champions League, to invest again and get stronger. So rather than lose players like Leicester might have done in the past, if that's okay to say, now they'll be more inclined to recruit them. So that will make them stronger year on year. So we move into fourth place, and now this is where it's going to start getting a little bit more interesting. In fourth, I've got Manchester United. Now, yes, I think Manchester United will make the top 4. Obviously, the top 5 could be in the Champions League, but the top 4, I do think it will be Manchester United. I think I've looked at their fixtures, and I feel that with, like I say, the likes of Pogba and Bruno in the midfield together, Igalo's going to be up front. Brandon Williams, Manchester United fans, if you're watching this, Brandon Williams, for me, is by far one of the breakthrough talents of this season, and he's a brilliant, brilliant player. He's a wonderful talent, but I want to know what you guys think of him. Obviously, as a Reading fan, I don't get to watch him, but you know, I get to admire him when he plays for United, and he is a cracking player. But want to know what you guys think of him, and where he could go in the future. So we move on to fifth place, and that's where I've got Chelsea. I think that Chelsea, again, they've had a little bit of a more of an awkward season. They're going through a bit of a transition at the moment with players. I mean, Lampard's doing a great job at the moment, but he's trying to, he's got to sort of balance it up between, the youngsters that are coming through, trying to get some experienced players in, and it's a little bit of a difficult job for him. So I do think that Chelsea will make fifth, but it's obviously a little bit more tricky for him. So, excuse me. So we go on to sixth place. And this is where I can see comments. I've got Tottenham. So, yes, that means I've got Spurs finishing above Arsenal, which I know doesn't happen very often. It's not a personal thing. I don't get involved in derbies. That's between the fans. But just looking at the remainder of the fixtures, Spurs have got a slightly easier run-in than Arsenal. I know they play each other, but to give one prediction away, I've already got that down as a 1-1 draw because I can't see that game being split. I think that will be a draw. So with that result and some others, obviously Spurs have found themselves in sixth place. In seventh, I've got Wolves. Now, this is an interesting one because obviously we don't yet know, as we've said, with what's going on with Manchester City. Obviously, if Manchester City don't be allowed access, then obviously sixth place would become the Europa League. Seventh could be a Europa League spot if another team from the top six wins the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a sort of a waiting game for Wolves, but we'll have to see on that one. But I do think that regardless, Wolves have had a fantastic season, and their fans should be very proud of them. If you're a Wolves fan watching this, let me know in the comments what you think of your season. But I do think Wolves have been superb. So that brings me on to eighth place, and that's where I've got Arsenal. I just don't know at the moment. Arsenal are a very, very big, strong Premier League club, but they're going through a little bit of a transition at the moment. That certain players aren't settled. Certain players, don't seem to be playing their best. Not blaming Arteta. He's trying his best, but I just think that for Arsenal, they just want to get this season out of the way. They have a chance in the Europa League to get into the Champions League by winning that. But I just think that the Premier League season, it may be too much for them. But I watched DT's video the other day, and he watched he went through their fixtures and everything, and I do think there are some games they can get results. I'm not saying they're going to lose every match or anything. I think they will win some games, and as I've always said with my predictions, it's a prediction, it's an opinion. I watched 9 or 10 Championship table prediction videos at the start of the season, and every single person had Reading finishing bottom, and we're not going to finish bottom. So it's an opinion. It's not gospel truth. It's just how you feel, and everyone has a different opinion. So let's try and embrace that. So moving on to ninth, and I've got Burnley. I think Burnley have had a really good season. So they'll continue that, and I think they'll get results where they need to, and they'll do enough, and they'll finish ninth. Then I've got Sheffield United in 10th. I know that that's a bit of a drop, but I think where Sheffield United will struggle is this crowds thing. With all these games being behind closed doors, the atmosphere in some stadiums will be completely different. Where some stadiums will still probably feel the same, maybe if they're not as full, but places like Carrow Road, the Emirates, Spurs' massive stadium, and yeah, I think especially Sheffield United, Bramall Lane is a daunting atmosphere, and their crowd really do get them over the line. So I think that could be a problem for them. But still, to finish 10th in your first season is insane. So fair play to Sheffield United. In 11th, I've got Everton. I've been very disappointed with Everton this season. They've got a really good spine of a team. Like I say, with the likes of Richarlison and obviously Sigurdsson, who we know very well. I've not been so surprised. Not surprised, so entertained with Everton. I thought they would do a hell of a lot better. Everton fans, if you're watching this again, let me know in the comments what you think. I don't think it's not been their best season, but again, they'll strengthen in the summer if teams can, and I'm sure they'll be fine. In 12th, 13th, and 14th, this is that little batch of mid-team table teams. I'm not going to put those up on screen, but I've got Crystal Palace, Southampton, and Newcastle respectively in those brackets. I think those teams will do enough. They're not going to be too worried about relegation. I think they'll be fine. So it brings me to the bottom 6. Now, I'm going to stress before I do this that this was the hardest on paper. This is what made me go to do, look, let me just predict the results and I'll see how the table comes out. And even doing it like that, I've looked at the table and I've gone, wow, it's going to be tight. So, 6th bottom, I've got West Ham. I think that West Ham will do enough to survive. I think they'll, as I've done with the predictions, they'll get enough results to just about keep themselves away from, not danger, because they're still very much in danger, but I can see them just about surviving. Then I got Brighton in 16th. Brighton, a great club. They've done really well, and I think that once again they might just sneak survival. And then I've got Aston Villa to survive. So you already know the bottom 3, and I'm sure there are some Watford fans that are probably going to strangle me after this, but I'll come on to that in a minute. But I think that Aston Villa will survive on the points. But what I've noticed that when I did the points, that Brighton, Villa, and the next team all had the same points. So it's going to be very, very tight. It's going to be goal difference. It could be anyone, to be honest. So I've got 18th. I've got Norwich. So I do think Norwich will go down. I think that they've had a fantastic season, even though they'll be getting relegated. But they've done well. But again, they have a chance to get out. I think they'll get enough results, enough points. But it's all about the goal difference. So maybe in a game where I've made them lose 2-1, for example, or they've drawn, or they've got a 0-0 or something. It's those goals. If they can, they might just be able to pip one of the other teams. But it's going to be very, 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 very tight and exciting. In 19th place, I've got Bournemouth. So Watford fans are now really going to kill me. So Bournemouth, I've said it all along. In every prediction video I've done for the Premier League relegation, I've mentioned Bournemouth. I think as amazing as they've been, and as fantastic as they have been in the Premier League and an asset for the Premier League, I think now their time is coming to an end. A bit like Stoke. Stoke were fantastic for years, and then they just slowly started to fall. And I do think that it's Bournemouth's turn. So, Watford are finishing bottom. Now, again, this is just a prediction. I'm not saying they will. Yes, people will say, well, you live in Bedford, so it's close to Luton, so you've got to be horrible to Watford. No, nothing like that at all. My Luton friends have got no influence on this whatsoever. I've looked at the results, I've looked at the games they've played, and I put it into the calculator doing the games, and this is where it's brought them. So, I'm not saying they will do. I'm just saying that that's where I've predicted them to finish. And, of course, they may completely not even get involved in the relegation fight. They might win their first 4 games and it'll just be, all over. But again, that's the fun of these prediction videos. They're just predictions. It's just something for you guys to watch. See, have a look, banter about it. Try not to be too harsh. But yeah, we just talk openly and honestly about football. It's what we all love. I'm so glad that we've all got something to debate about. So guys, that is my Premier League table. You will agree, disagree, I'm sure. Please let me know in the comments what you think. It's not a problem, good or bad, I read them all. Try and reply to all of them as well. I don't get that many comments at the moment, so replying to them is very simple. But no, thank you guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'm going to hopefully be doing the prediction videos next week, and then as soon as I know what's going on with Leagues 1 and 2, then of course we'll come back on here and we'll have those tables as well. Alright guys, stay safe, take care, thank you for watching, we'll see you soon.